Ladies and gentlemen, we are here for episode 57 of the Game Junction podcast. We have a special guest this week, Brett Weiss. How's it going?
Yo, it's going great. How are you guys?
Doing good, doing good. Of course,
Man,
we have Millennial Collector back here this week. How's it going?
it's going great. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Can't
Doing
complain,
great.
man.
Happy Sunday, all.
Same.
Happy Sunday. We'll go ahead and shout out our sponsor. We have timelessgamer.net again this week. And of course, timelessgamer.net exists to inform and enlighten video game enthusiasts of all kinds. And we picked out an article this week that we enjoyed, and it was F-Zero 99 just received 5 new tracks, it says. So that's pretty cool. I wasn't aware of that. So if you want to go over to timelessgamer.net, you can check that out. And we will go ahead and get started. Brett, so let's learn about you from the audience. Do you want to go ahead and give yourself a little introduction?
Well, my name is Brett Weiss, as you can see by the screen there, and I've been gaming for longer than many of you probably in the audience have been alive. Started back in 1975 at the bowling alley and skating rink. I discovered Pong and Midway's Gunfight when I was 8 years old, and then in Christmas of that year, my cousin got Pong for his home, the Atari's Pong for his home, which was crazy to me. I didn't know you could play video games in a house. We weren't familiar with the Magnavox Odyssey that came out in '72. That was not something I remember seeing on TV. None of my friends had it. So when my cousin could play video games in his bedroom, that was amazing to me. And then '76, my two best friends each had a Fairchild Channel F. '77, the Atari came out, amazing, blew everybody's minds, and I've been at it ever since.
That's awesome. Did you end up grabbing a Odyssey at any point?
Well, I still do not have a Magnavox Odyssey. There's just never been one fall into my lap. I tend to wait for deals or something special, and it's just never been a priority as far as, just having to have one. But, I'm not done yet. Not done collecting. If the right deal comes up, I'll grab it.
Yeah, no, I've noticed here recently the price of all the Odyssey stuff has jumped up. At least since the last time I cared to look. I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
have one anymore either.
Right.
I've sort of looked at grabbing one because I wanted to talk about some history stuff, and they have jumped up in price a lot. So
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting system to collect for, with the long boxes and just the realistic looking gun and just the history and the genius of Ralph Baer and everything. It's a fascinating console for sure. But I'm actually a big fan of the Odyssey 2. I grew up playing that one. My cousin had it, and her dad wouldn't let us play it in the living room because he thought it would ruin the TV. And so we had to play it on our black and white television set in her bedroom. But we played that baseball and the game that came with it, the auto racing game. And man, we played that for just countless hours. So much fun.
yeah, that's awesome. I remember I was always told that as well, that the video game systems would ruin the TV. We could never play games on the living room TV.
Yeah, that was like, there was partly truth to that, but there was also mythology built around it. Now, if you left a game on, one of those old games, early game system with the CRT, it could burn the image into your screen, but just playing it normally, not going to hurt your TV at all. So there was,
Right.
reality met myth, and of course, parents are going to fall on the side of myth, and they didn't want. So that's how that came about.
I feel like it was more of a, hey, we don't want you to take up the TV, go play somewhere else.
I'm sure that was a big part of it. And, in those days, I mean, when I was growing up, my mom had a TV back in her bedroom, like if she didn't want to watch sports or something. But most households just had one TV, and it was in the main, the living room or the main family room or whatever. Some people had a small black and white TV in the kitchen or in one of the bedrooms or something, and that was limited, usually smaller or not hooked to cable or something. So, yeah, it was a much different time, and that was one of the Vectrex was such a big deal when it came out because it had its own screen and you didn't have to use the family TV set.
Yeah.
I know in the 80s, I burned playing Zelda,
Mm-hmm.
and just keeping the game on the whole time.
Yeah.
I'd burned an image into my CRT.
Yeah.
I don't think even when we got rid of the TV, it was still there. You turn it off and you can always still see on a map.
The struggle was real for sure.
So were you leaving it on like when you went to school? Is that what you're?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was no saves on some
Yeah.
stuff back in the day,
Well,
so
there was
you could like,
game.
huh?
There was for Link to the Past. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was probably Link to the Past. It was a Zelda game for sure.
Nice. Yeah. No, I definitely did that too. Remember a lot of like N64 games. I would do that because you would have to have like the actual battery pack, and it was a very long time before I got one of those. And
Right.
definitely do remember that for sure.
Well, the Atari era was tricky because most games didn't have pause. Now, a lot of Intellivision games have pause. You could hit like two buttons on the pad, but the early ColecoVision games didn't have pause. Most 2600 games didn't have pause. The 5200 did have a pause button on the controller, which was nice. But
Yep.
yeah, a lot of those early games, no pause. So if you're playing, and nobody better interrupt you if you're, on a high score run or something.
Yeah, I know a lot of like it was a thing to have to try to get through a whole game back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You wanted to have that sort of time to try to get through the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
I know, yeah,
Even,
especially like NES Contra for me. I would play that over and over and over, trying to get through that. And
same. And I had no idea there was a cheat code. Didn't
yeah,
know
me
about
neither.
it. Yeah,
Me
'cause
neither.
I got the game when it came out in '88, and I had no idea about the cheat code, and so I played the hell out of it, and I got so good at basically dancing and flipping and all over the screen, avoiding the bullets, and I was able to beat it without a cheat code just because of playing it so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was terrible at that game when I was younger. Same with like Super C, and it wasn't until I was probably an adult that I beat Contra, I think.
Well, I was 21 in '88, so I had an advantage.
Love it. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to know a little bit more about you for everybody watching. So what is it that you do in the gaming space?
Okay, so it goes back a ways. So I'd mentioned that I'd been playing video games almost since their inception. And when the 2600 came out, that was not going to happen at our house because it was $250. And back then, with inflation, if you compare it today, that's like what, $800 or $900 or something like that.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen. But I was going to my friends' houses, cousins' houses, everybody I knew that had game systems. I would go over there and play the heck out of them. Finally, I got a ColecoVision in 1982 when I was 15 for Christmas. That was sort of a deal with Santa. I had to kick in to pay half of it. And and it came with Donkey Kong, and I had Mousetrap, and that was just amazing and magical. And then I got just started collecting systems. A friend of mine at high school sold me his Atari 2600 in the spring of '83 for $10 with 10 games. That was before really the crash started happening. It was the spring of '83, but when prices were still kind of high and everything. So that was an amazing deal. At that point, used games were still very expensive. So that was phenomenal. That sort of sent me down the road of collecting for every system and picking up used consoles and used games and stuff. And I sort of kept steady with it from, with each console generation. And in 1997, to get to sort of my writing and stuff, how that happened, my brother-in-law had sent me a want ad for a website called the All Game Guide, allgame.com, which is long gone now. But at the time, it was a website that was devoted to cataloging, describing, reviewing every single game for every single console in the history of the universe, plus computers. So, and it was just getting off the ground, and they wanted freelance writers, and yes, they were paying. And I was blown away by the fact that you could write about Commodore 64 and Odyssey 2 and Atari 5200, and that people wanted to pay you. Seemed very strange to me because in the 90s, older systems were considered junk, and the whole retro gaming scene was pretty underground at this point.
Yeah.
And, the internet was just starting to get, ubiquitous, and it was really in the late 90s when more and more people got online, and it was starting to be fairly common. But it was still really strange to me that but it turns out what they were using these write-ups for was for eBay and Blockbuster and these companies that would use these write-ups.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I had steady work through the All Game Guide, and at the time I was working at Walden Books because I grew up you can tell I'm a big book fan, and I grew up loving to read and loving reference books and novels and everything. And I grew up loving video games. So my interest in reading and playing video games sort of merged. And I loved reference guides. My my parents had a encyclopedia set and a science encyclopedia set, and I found these fascinating, and of course dictionaries and everything else. I found reference books fascinating, which is kind of strange.
You like dictionaries.
And I cannot lie.
Dang,
Yeah,
Brett.
kind of strange. But yeah, I like reference guys, and I started reading, like, the 100 greatest science fiction novels ever, the 100 greatest most important people of all time, and I just like listicles before that was even a word, and I liked video game reference, and this was just perfect for me to start writing for the All Game Guide, and I did that in late '97. I started writing for them. And I started doing that so much, I became an editor for the company as well, and started doing some other freelance writing projects. And so I was able to quit my job at Walden Books to write full time, plus some other stuff like eBay and whatnot. But I was able to work at home, and my kids were real little, so this was perfect for me because I could spend extra time with my kids and do some writing while they were gone to, while they were taking naps or late at night after they'd gone to bed. So I could work at home when the kids were little. So this was awesome. And so, yeah, I was writing for the All Game Guide, the Comics Buyer's Guide, and I started writing for other publications as well. And this led to stints I was a freelance writer for the Fort Worth Star Telegram for a decade. I'm still writing for Antique Week and Old School Gamer. Yeah, all through the late 90s, all through the, on through the 2000s until now, I've been gaming and writing, steadily throughout, and just having a great time with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I got my start in the writing space of video games too. I find that really fascinating that that they were doing that for like different companies. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah. So the All Game Guide is gone, but they still live on. The All Music Guide actually predates the All Game Guide, and you can still go to their website. Just go to, I think it's allmusic.com, and you could look up like record album reviews. And they basically had a video game version of that for several years. And even like, I don't know if you've heard of John Jackson Miller. He writes Star Wars and Star Trek novels. Now he's a big New York Times bestselling author. One of his early writing gigs was writing about Intellivision games for the All Game Guide. Chris Baker, who does a lot of stuff in the gaming space now with superhero games, and he's worked for like, I'm not sure what all companies, but I think he's worked with Marvel on video games and stuff. One of his early writing gigs was the All Game Guide. So it's interesting to see where the guy that published Classic Gamer magazine, Chris Kavanaugh, was an editor with the All Game Guide. So it's really interesting to see. Michael Thomason, the guy that at one point had the Guinness Book of World Records for the most games. Yeah, so a lot of people that you've heard of today or that went on to do other gaming related projects started with the All Game Guide. It was a really interesting time to be writing about games because it was kind of a new frontier, writing about retro games. Now, there were fanzines at this point, like the Digital Press fanzine that the Joe Santulli, the National Video Game Museum guy, did. He published that, and there were some other fanzines, but, getting online and everything, and just their ambitious project to review everything. I would go around. So at this point in the 90s, it was just the golden age of garage sales. And I was a hardcore collector even then. And I was just, anytime you went out to garage sales, like literally every time you would go out to garage sales for 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday morning, you would always come back with games. And I don't remember, it was very rare not to have some good finds. And I would just come back, complete boxed Atari 5200 with 30 games, $20, that kind of stuff was super common because it was just considered garbage. And when I was writing for the All Game Guide, I would actually buy games to write about. And so I remember getting like an Atari ST system with like 80 or 90 boxed CIB games and just coming home and cranking out descriptions of those games. And I would add to my collection this way, and I would find, just material to write about by, buying games for a quarter a piece or whatever at garage sales. It was a really fun time to be a gamer, a collector, and a writer and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So when did you make the jump into writing your own books? going from magazines and periodicals to
Yeah,
books.
that's the perfect lead in, because the All Game Guide directly led to that. So when I was the All Game Guide after 9/11, they sort of downsized a little bit. The economy was hit hard, and the publishing industry was hit hard. Well, not terribly long after that, they sort of downsized, and they kept their on-site writers full time, but they reduced off-site writers to just just a few hours a week. And then eventually it went away altogether. And I thought, well, if I'm not doing the All Game Guide anymore, maybe I can just do something like this on my own, like a reference book for video games. And I was influenced by Leonard Herman. He wrote the Atari ABC to the VCS, a complete reference guide to Atari 2600 games,
Yep.
And that was very influential to me. And I thought, if he did that, maybe I could do this for like every other console in existence, just this ridiculous ambition of mine. And so that was when my classic home video games book, that's when those started. And my first classic home video games book, covers the 2600, 5200, 7800, Vectrex, and all these crazy systems like the Arcadia 2001, the Bally Astrocade, television, and I just put together a compendium, complete reference guide to all those consoles. And my publisher wanted me to continue, so I did the next era with the Master System, NES, and 7800, the systems that came out in 85 and 86, and then leading to the systems that came out in 89, the Genesis, TurboGrafx, and Neo Geo. Then I switched over to doing the omnibus books, so I could have big full color hardcover books. And I did the 100 greatest. My latest book, 100 greatest console video games, 88 to 98. There you go. But those 100 greatest books are tons of fun to write, because I can focus on, just the best of the best from a decade and stuff. So yeah, but the All Game Guide just losing that gig pretty much led to just deciding to go out on my own, because the All Game Guide, we were getting ready to start publishing some books, because they're all music guide books, and they were going to do gaming ones as well. But it went away before they were able to start doing that, unfortunately. Unfortunately, but it did lead to some good things for me, and a lot of people that wrote for the All Game Guide, like I said, it led to good things for them too. It was a great way to hone my teeth on writing. Because hone my teeth, is that even a thing? Hone my teeth. I think I made that up. It was a really good way to sort of hone my writing skills, because when I first started writing for the All Game Guide, I had done some writing and I had some published credits, mostly fiction. I'd been writing for some small press magazines and some fiction and stuff like that. But it was really the All Game Guide where I started getting steady freelance writing work. And the early stuff was a little rough, but man, just writing literally thousands of descriptions of games and a lot of reviews too, really got to where I could, write pretty tightly and concise, and get that kind of style going. And it really helped me a lot. Without the All Game Guide, there's no way I could have done the books, because I needed all that practice.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Is there? I know there's some other people writing some other like retro gaming books. Is there much like sort of competition in the space or anything like that, or is it pretty?
Well, with most of us, it's a very collaborative, and it's very, we'll promote each other and we'll do these shows together, and the books are different and stuff. Not everyone feels so, some other, maybe one or two other people feel like it's a little more, one person in particular feels like it's more of a competition or something, but most people I deal with are great, and we promote each other's stuff. And people like Jeffrey Wittenhagen has written some nostalgic stories for my books, and Patrick Hickey, I've collaborated with him. I wrote the foreword to one of his books, and he's written some nostalgic stories for my books. And years ago, this certain other person, we had a great working relationship as well, and that went south for some reasons I still can't quite figure out. But anyway, you're not always going to have, hit a home run. But most people I encounter in retro gaming community have been amazing. And we have, just a great time seeing each other at shows. And like I said, collaborating and promoting each other's work. And like I said, at Game On, I had a box of extra books. this Darren Hupke that writes PlayStation books. He, I asked him, man, can you ship these to me when you get home? Because he drove there and I flew, and these big, heavy hardcover books. Oh, I'll be happy to. And so, so it's great. So, overall, it's awesome. Now, would I sell more books if nobody else was doing this? Yes. So there is competition, but I'm fine with that. I'm just having fun with this, and I've got other avenues of income, and I have a day job now. And, I've always had, even when I was just full on, I was a full-time freelance writer for over 20 years. Books have never been my main source of income because I was a working journalist for over 20 years, and I still am, just very part-time now. But I was just, cranking out. There was several years there together where I had over 80 published articles, in print, plus a ton of other online work. So my job as a journalist was more of my focus than books, but books were a fun side project. So I'm all good with, the more the merrier. I'm just having fun,
Yeah, no, that's great. It should be collaborative. I mean, that's the way that it should be. Like friendly competition's great.
Yeah.
Sometimes that pushes you to maybe do a little better, and I'm
Yeah.
always for that. But I think
Right. Well, my transition from just sort of the more reference type books over to, the big hardcover coffee table books, because that's sort of where when my first retro gaming book came out in 2007, Classic Home Video Games 72 to 84, retro gaming books weren't really a category. Now, there were some people like Van Burnham and Leonard Herman and some others who had written retro gaming books, but it was a very small. Now there's, Bitmap Books. Now there are entire companies devoted to writing, to publishing retro gaming books. When in 2007, very, as a matter of fact, my first attempt at getting a book published was back in the mid 90s. I was trying to get a book on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis going. Just a collection of reviews, like about maybe a 200 or 300 page book with synopses, reviews, or whatever, of just, maybe a couple of hundred for each system, just kind of a mainstream book that I could not find a publisher, because that was just like, wait a minute, write about video games. What does that even mean? Because at the time, most gaming books were tips and tricks.
Yeah.
There were some books aimed at kids. There were some kind of fluff history books. But there really wasn't much in the way of true gaming guides as far as these types of compendiums, publishing all these reviews and stuff. Digital press was a thing. But yeah, it was very tough to find, I couldn't find a publisher. It was going to be Captain Cartridge Rates the Games, and I had like a character idea in mind and everything. And
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, I thought it kind of had some commercial potential, but and if I would have been more tech savvy or whatever, or a little more ambitious with it, as far as I could have maybe self-published it and done that. But I was just a writer. I've never been into the design aspect of it or wanting to learn any of that or do that. I'm a pure, just a writer, and that's why I have a YouTube editor. That's why I have a publisher and I don't self-publish. I've got 3 self-published books, just kind of labor of love type of things. But as far as my main books go, I didn't want to go the self-published route. First, I like to see my books in stores, which is really nice. But the main reason is because I want the publisher to deal with the binding and deal with the design and all that stuff, with my input, of course. But so I'm just more of a writer than anything.
Now, your books are on Amazon, correct?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and show your website then. If you want to, you've got some of them advertised here on your website.
Right.
I think the two most recent ones were 100 games and Amiibos, SNES Amiibos 2.
The 100 greatest console video
Amiibos.
games. Yeah, the 100 greatest console video games, 88 to 98, is my latest book, and then the NES Omnibus are my latest 2 omnibus books.
Yeah.
And that picture there, that's my nephew in the late 80s. One of my best friends. See, in the 80s, early to mid 80s, several of my friends had a ColecoVision, and we were collecting and playing and going to each other's house. Well, one of my friends in the late 80s, he got out of it completely, and he gave every bit of his ColecoVision stuff to my nephew, and that's the picture of him there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Here's
Leonard
Herman.
I wrote the foreword to Leonard Herman's. He republished his ABC to the VCS. It was out of print for a very long time. And I told him, man, you need to put this thing back in print. And he said, well, it's not complete because of all the homebrew stuff that come out. I said, that doesn't matter. Just republish the book because you'll have all the original Atari 2600 games in there. That's all anybody really expects. And so he did, and I wrote the forward to it, which I was very honored to do.
Yeah, I grabbed that when he put it back out for print. He brought it to Coors, I believe, last year, and I grabbed it.
Very historically important book. It was the very first complete reference guide to any gaming console when it came out in the forever ago. So it's pretty awesome that he's got it back in print now.
V in the chat says, "I love the mention of Chat GPT."
Yeah, so I've been playing around with Chat GPT recently, and I did, just for kicks, I had it write some ColecoVision stuff, and so I put one of those things on my website. Yeah, so I'm sitting here talking about what I write around, and my latest thing on my website was something that was a pure Chat GPT thing. So there you go. There goes all of my cred down the toilet.
No, I've messed around with it
over.
well.
Oh, it's kind of fun. I had him do a ColecoVision story, and I said, tell me, I said, ChatGPT, write a nostalgic ColecoVision story, growing up playing ColecoVision in the style of Stephen King. And it was actually pretty good. And then I had him do one in the manner of Dr. Seuss. And it was really good. It was very lyrical and everything. And I was like, this is kind of scary. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I've done a few of them, and I was like, you know what? They're really, really good, and this would have taken me a long time to probably do something like this, and it did it in just seconds. It's just like, oh yeah, it's taken over. The AI is taking over for sure.
It's pretty crazy. Now, one thing I've noticed now at my job, we've been doing a little bit with ChatGPT, just to sort of. I work as the lead video game cataloger at Heritage Auctions in Dallas, and that's the world's largest auction house for collectibles. And we've got a really cool video game department, and we've been using that a little bit. Now, we use it as a tool. It's definitely not a replacement for your work. You just use it as a little tool for maybe just, but when you use it, you definitely have to look at whatever it does with a fine-tooth comb, because it gets some things wrong.
Yep.
It makes mistakes, and you've got to be, know what you're doing to use it as a tool. But use it as a tool like Google or like a dictionary or like something like that. It's just an advanced tool. And you got to know what you're doing, and you can't let it take over. You got to just use it, periodically, and use it sparingly.
Yeah.
So,
sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
So, what kind of work do you do with Heritage Auctions?
Okay, so their video game department, they auction video games. Now, a lot of these are, the high dollar graded stuff, the rare stuff, or the stuff that's in really tip-top condition, early print runs and stuff. But they also do, CIB group lots and, just all kinds of stuff, gaming related, original gaming art, everything. So I'm the lead video game cataloger. So I'm sort of, I just write up descriptions for the website and for their catalogs that they publish. So I'll write about the games that are going up for auctions. I'll edit other people's write-ups for the catalog and for the website. I'll check out variants and just look into like Super Mario Brothers is no longer just Super Mario Brothers. There's the early copies, there's the kind with a hang tab, there's the sealed versions, there's a CIB,
left and right bros.
Yeah, there's so many, right and left bros for Super Mario Brothers 3. And there's all these variants I have to keep track of and stuff, but it's a fun job, and it's got good benefits, and I have a great team, and I've got a great boss, and it's just a ton of fun. And I've been actually doing gaming cons for them. I had been a guest at Too Many Games once before, but this past Too Many Games, I worked there for Heritage, and it was great, just working at their booth and having a ton of fun. And it's different. I had to tailor my writing a little bit differently, focusing on the collectability and the rarity and why this is historically important more over the gameplay. It's more important when you're putting this stuff up for auction to put it sort of, and it's just, it was an adjustment. Been working there for a couple of years now, but really enjoying it. Got super cool coworkers and stuff.
That's awesome, because Heritage has been around for quite a while.
They've been around forever. I believe they started off doing coins, and I think it goes all the way back to the 70s and 80s. And they started off in coins, but they added comics and jewelry and furniture and fine art. And early in 2019, they opened a video game division. And I'd been hoping they would do that at some point. I thought it'd be kind of cool if they did that. And then they moved closer to where I live. And I thought, I applied, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, that's Heritage awesome. Auction, they auctioned off a Babe Ruth bat that went for $1 million recently.
Yeah, they auctioned off a Mickey Mantle card for over $12 million. It was the highest graded Mickey Mantle card, and and a 0.5 Action Comics #1. 0.5, not 5. A 0.5 recently went for over $400,000 of Action Comics #1 first appearance of Superman, because a high grade one goes for millions. Yeah. But even a 0.5 went for several hundred thousand. So that was wild. That was the highest selling 0.5 copy ever. So, but it's a fascinating place to work, because we're always auctioning off movie props, and I've met some celebrities working there, because they'll come in sometimes, like the Norm and Cliff from Cheers were up at our place, and I got to meet them and hang out with them, because they were auctioning off this hardcore movie guy that collect movie props for many years. He had an entire collection devoted to his collection, and they were auctioning off the set from Cheers along with a bunch of other stuff. And they came up there for like a meet and greet and wine and dine and that kind of stuff. So it's a cool place to work.
Did you guys see, this is totally random, but did you guys see that the Brady Bunch house, they redid that and then auctioned that off? Or sold it?
And they were worried that Aranda was going to buy it and just sell the land or something, but a hardcore collector apparently bought it, a fan of Brady Bunch, and so they're going to use it they're going to keep it intact. So that's good.
They made it into a show, and they redid the show. I actually watched the show. It was like remaking the Brady show.
I watched it too, because my wife's a big Brady Bunch fan, so I watched it with her, and that was fun. But after that, they sold it, and they didn't have any stipulations with that sale, so anybody could have bought it. But luckily, a fan bought it, so they're going to keep it intact like that.
Well, since you guys watched that, did you watch the Vanilla Ice renovation show?
Did not. Typically, don't watch that kind of stuff, but no.
Pretty wild. We got Draven in the chat asking if we've seen the movie Arcade from 1993. He said that's his profile picture image.
Arcade from 93? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I've never heard of that movie. I'll have to check it out and pull it up. That's interesting.
Brett's actually been in a couple movies, right?
I was in Playing with Power, the Nintendo story. It was a really cool documentary, big 5-hour, deep dive on the entire history of Nintendo from the late 1800s to, Switch era, and that was really cool. And I was on the History Channel's snack-sized edition of their Nintendo, the machines that made us, or something like that. And I was in Video Games the Movie, and but my scenes, well, I was supposed to be in Video Games the Movie. I'll put it that way. So 2 of the actors from Scrubs, that sitcom, and myself, different locations, different filming times, but we were talking about ColecoVision. They had a segment with those two of those guys talking about ColecoVision, growing up with that, and then they filmed me at Classic Gaming Expo in Vegas, that old show, that great gaming con that goes back many years. But they cut that segment out, so there was I don't even think they mentioned ColecoVision in Video Games the Movie, which was very disappointing. It was only an hour and a half long, and I think they should have added at least 10, 15, 20 minutes to that to talk more about the 5200, to even talk about the ColecoVision at all. But I thought that was really puzzling, because those deleted scenes do exist, and if you go to my YouTube channel, you can find them. Just put in Brett Weiss, Video Games the Movie, and you can actually watch the deleted scenes with myself and the Scrubs actors talking about ColecoVision, which is not in the film, which is really disappointing.
That is disappointing, because that's important.
Yeah, huge system. It was a massive upgrade over everything that came before it. Huge evolutionary step, and
better than the 2600.
Well, the 2600 has its strengths too. I love all that stuff, but I'm going to be in the forthcoming Nintendo 64 Quest that Rob McCallum is directing. Rob McCallum.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I enjoyed Nintendo Quest, and now they're doing Nintendo 64, and his film, his main camera guy came over to my house and did a big shoot on me, just talking about the history of Nintendo 64, my experience with the console and stuff. And then Rob zoomed in literally on a laptop on a thing. It reminded me of that Big Bang Theory episode where Sheldon is going around on those wheels, and you can just see him on the laptop. And so Rob was over here virtually, so that was cool. Yeah, looking forward to that coming out. I think they start filming the actual travel. They announced that today, that they're now filming the, would actually go out and look for the games.
And what's that one called? The 64
the
Quest?
Nintendo 64 Quest, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the first one was Nintendo Quest.
Yeah.
And it's Rob McCallum.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then this one's going to be, I think, Nintendo 64 Quest, if I remember right.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I'm going to be a part of the Rarity 2 documentary that they're doing. So I'm excited about that because I really like the first one.
I was supposed to also be in. There was one about collecting, and I can't remember what it was called now. But I was filmed at Retropalooza gaming convention. Okay. They filmed me out like in the hall, kind of away from everything. Well, it turned out the sound was bad, so I got cut out of that one as well. But as some kind of concession, I wrote the liner notes or the forward or whatever for the paper that was with the DVD that came with the. And I can't remember what it was by Darren. Can't remember the director. Anyway, it was one of these collecting documentaries, about collecting retro games. There's been a few of them by now, but this one was a few years ago. Anyway, it's fun. It's cool to be in them. And the one you're gonna be in is the sequel to one I think I might have seen part of. Was Wittenhagen in the first one?
I think so, yeah. And there's going to be a lot of people in this one too. He keeps putting stuff out. He hasn't came out and filmed my part yet.
Who's the director?
He's making his rounds. His name. Oh God, yes, ask me.
Yeah, I can't remember who was in the first one. The first one. Had
I feel
retro game had Aaron Riff and John Riggs.
Yeah.
Had a bunch of people that I'm assuming will probably be in it again.
Yeah. Nobody's contacted me, so I guess I'm not going to be in the second one or the first one. That's okay.
Well, it might be a little bit too late. I hate to break it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's too late for the first one.
Yeah. Well, there'll be others. There'll be others.
Yes.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think it's very cool though. To have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Congrats on that. That's awesome.
So much. Yeah, thank you. I do want to shout out to my buddy Bob Rose. He did the Token Taverns documentary. It's like it's really interesting. It's about like barcades, but it kind of goes a little more in depth to having these characters, and it's kind of showing the day to day with the barcades, and then it has a bunch of other people featured in it. What's the one lady's name that was in it, Thomas? Do you remember? It's random. The guy that hooked up with
what's her name from Donald Trump?
Yeah, I forget.
Oh, Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, Stormy Daniels. Yeah,
she was in the video.
Yeah, she's in it.
I think she was doing a spot at a bar that they just happens we're filming in. So they're like, "Hey, you want to be in the film?" And she was in it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal film though, and it's streaming. It's on Amazon Prime Video. So I just wanted to give a shout out because he's
it's on Prime.
He's a really cool guy. And yeah, you can stream it right now.
What's it called again?
Token Taverns.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out.
You would definitely.
Yeah, you would like
it. You would really, really like
cool.
it. It's great. A lot of work. He works in the TV industry already, so this was sort of passion project.
Nice. I really enjoy watching gaming documentaries, and I love documentaries in general, rock and roll documentaries, all that stuff.
Me too.
Yeah,
I've probably seen all of them over and over and over.
Yeah, it's shot really well. It's
cool.
It's
and he's talking to current arcade owners, kind of thing.
It's like barcades.
Yeah,
so they're going around to the barcades.
Yeah.
So they're talking about how brewery type IPA type rise of that plus plus it was shot during COVID, so it talks about right after COVID how it was kind of reopening the bars and the barcades, playing again, having to do the social distancing, things like that.
Right.
Yeah. It's a really cool documentary, and there's quite a few people that I know that as well that are in it.
Cool.
Involved with it. One of the Pacina guys is in it. Nehemiah's in it.
Nice.
All kinds of people. So it's good stuff. But yeah, I just want to shout that out.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Promote that a bit since they've got that on Amazon.
I vaguely heard of it, but it's good to know that it's on Prime. I can check it out.
Yeah, definitely. So We talked a little. You touched just a little bit on the collecting stuff. What are you collecting right now? Is there anything that you're specifically going after?
Yeah, I've been kind of steadily at it for a very long time, and I'm not like super like aggressive about it, but man, when the deal is right, and I've always got my eyes out for games for pretty much any system I don't have. Pre NES, I will buy any game that I don't have in my collection. NES forward, I'll buy any game that looks fun to play, or the price is right, or it just looks like an old school genre, or it's just something that I've heard about that like I've been playing Castlevania, which is the hack and slash on Castlevania on 360.
Is it? It's not Judgment, right?
Shadow.
There's a Shadow.
Shadow. Yeah, I've been enjoying that a lot lately, just because I heard it was a Castlevania game, but with a hack and slash gameplay. I love hack and slash games, God of War, Maximo, and all those. So
the second one's even better too.
Yeah, and I want to get the sequel to that. So if I see that, I'll pick it up. I've been enjoying Lollipop Chainsaw. Love that game. And so yeah, if I see something I want to play, or if it's got a cool retro theme, or it just looks badass or whatever, I'll grab it. And I'm not necessarily a completist with modern stuff, but if it catches my eye or it looks cool, I'll grab it. And any like Super Nintendo, Genesis, NES game that looks cool, that's cheap, I'll grab it. What the heck? It's fine. I'm still adding to my collection to this day, and I've got a big game room in my house that's dedicated. It's almost exclusively gaming and movies and stuff. So if I see a $1 DVD I want, or a $5 game that looks cool, I don't have, I'll grab it. So collecting is not quite as zeroed in or focused as some, where you're just constantly trying to. But man, I'm still at it, and I'm always looking for bargains. I'm always also looking for stuff to resell. I sell stuff at shows, and I sell stuff out of I've got a booth in an antique mall. So if you're in the Fort Worth, Texas area, you can hit me up on the Time Machine on Facebook. There's my antique mall booth. So yeah, I'm always cherry pick. I'll go into any kind of used bookstore, any kind of retro gaming store. I'm always on the lookout for bargains or catching them slipping or whatever. So yeah, it's still fun to collect. I still enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I'm working on the. You were talking about like sort of having a focus, because I've went through, and I think everybody does this sort of as a collector, or at least most people. Like there's like periods where I kind of do a shift on what collecting or going after, and at one point in time early on, it was like I'll take whatever I don't have, sort of thing, and it was always that, and things would just pile up, things that I wasn't interested in, and have 4 shelves of PS2 sports games that I would never play.
Right.
And then I went through just recently, because I've done this over, and it's like this repeating cycle for me.
Yeah.
Then I was like, okay, I'm not doing that. Got rid of a bunch of that stuff. I was like, okay, I'm going to go for 2 of these complete sets, because I like the systems a lot. Then I was like, you know what? Like about 3/4 of these I will never play and have zero interest in. So I'm like, let's not do that. Now I'm sort of like zeroing in on stuff. I'm finding myself, because I'm a big EverDrive fan. I love being able to have access to all that stuff and playing it on PGA and the way it was originally meant to be played. So like I'm pretty good with a lot of the retro stuff right now. Doing that, I really like the EverDrives, and I find when I have it, I don't really take it out anyway. If it's just collecting it on the shelf, I'm like, what's the point? I have it on here for me. So now with a lot of stuff like NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, GBA, things like that, I've gone like kind of the EverDrive route, and I'm pretty content with that right now. So now I'm like, what do I not have the option for? Pretty much modern stuff. I'm finding that physically, I'm just really picking that up, because there's no other way to play that right now. So that's been my sort of shift with
and if you load up on modern stuff digitally, you run out of space anyway. So it's nice to get physical.
Yeah. No, that's kind of where I'm at. Not like collecting Switch stuff has been very enjoyable. There's tons of retro to be had.
Oh, it's an amazing system. The retro games, the collections of older titles, the retro style games, all kinds of great stuff on the Switch for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Have you tried F-Zero 99 yet?
Not.
Why?
Is it?
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I love the original F-Zero for sure.
Yeah, it's pure chaos. 100 people on one of the Super Nintendo maps.
Right. Yeah.
You streamed it, right?
Yeah,
Thomas,
I did it. I did it this past week too, and it's like the Timeless Gamer said. There's new maps even too.
Cool.
So it's just chaotic. It is crazy. With
I really don't do almost zero online gaming. Oh, my dog wants to join me. Yeah. Oh my. I don't hardly do any. I have like I download games to my Switch sometimes, but almost all of my gaming is physical copies on the original consoles. Just me playing. I hardly do any online stuff, and I don't know. I just how it is, you know.
I don't either. Almost never, especially right now. But that one I just kind of wanted to check out since it's pretty much it's online only, right, Thomas?
Yeah.
Like that's the only option for it. Yeah. So I just wanted to try it out, and I knew it was going to be chaotic. And I am actually not the biggest fan of the Super Nintendo version of F-Zero. I really like the one on the 64.
Yeah, the
Game
64 one's more complex and stuff.
Yeah, I love that game. The GameCube one's really good as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it became pure chaos. But yeah. So what types of games do you enjoy playing the most? Like, is there a genre you seem to go for to play?
Yeah. There's two kinds. Well, there's two eras I like. Well, there's a million eras I like. So this is a really tough question to answer. So I love the old school stuff. I love what they used to just before they even called it platforming, climbing games like Donkey Kong, Miner 2049er, Beauty and the Beast for the Intellivision, any games where you're using a lot of ladders and climbing, Lode Runner, all kinds of games like that, or just Space Panic. They're so much fun. I love those. And then now they call them, or once platforming became a thing, they started calling them non-scrolling platformers. I love that type of game. I love maze games like Pac-Man and every game that Pac-Man influenced, especially games like Ladybug and Mr. Do and Dig Dug that are a little more complex and have more strategies than Pac-Man. Take that genre and really make it where there's a lot of different strategies. I love Super Pac-Man. I love those kinds of games. And the non-scrolling platform of the maze and the old school shoot 'em up like Space Invaders or Shooter, what they call non-scrolling shooter. Back in the day, they had a very they called Space Invaders, Galaga, Galaxian Slide and Shoot. Electronic Games Magazine came up with that genre. When Electronic Games Magazine came out in the early 80s, it was the first magazine dedicated fully to video games. They had to invent names of genres. They had to invent, what these games are called, and they called like Space Invaders Slide and Shoot, but now you call it a fixed screen or non-scrolling shooter. Love those. So I love all that early stuff like that, early 80s stuff, late 70s stuff. But then when you go to the modern stuff, I just love, like I mentioned, 3D, third person, hack and slash stuff. Phenomenal. The Ninja Gaiden remake from a few years ago for the Xbox, the Ninja Gaiden Black and all that. Shinobi remake on the PS2, Maximo Ghost to Glory, and Army of Zen. Love those. Maximo Ghost to Glory is my favorite modern game of all time. Love it.
What game's it called?
It's called Maximo Ghost to Glory. It's sort of a spiritual successor to the Ghosts and Goblins stuff, but it's got hardcore hack and slash, hardcore platforming. It's got puzzles. And when you hit a gravestone or something, or an enemy with your sword, you can really feel it. It's just a badass game. And it's so underrated. You never hear about it on top 10 or top 20 lists. It's my favorite modern, it feels modern to me because it's 3D and it's got great graphics. And it was
on the PS2, wasn't it?
Yeah, PS2. And then there was a sequel, Maximo and the Army of Zen. And it's great too. So yeah, I love those. Even like a crappy game like Conan on the 360, I enjoy because it's got that 3D hack and slash thing to it.
Yeah.
Or like Soul Fighter on the Dreamcast. That's another bad hack and slash, but I enjoy it because I love the genre.
Yeah. No, I like those games as well. Are you into the Dynasty Warrior games?
I haven't played those, and I've heard I need to play Onimusha. I've heard those are good.
Yeah, those are fun for sure.
Yeah, I love God of War, of course. God of War 1 and 2. I never got a PS3, but so I didn't go beyond that. But I love the first two God of Wars. So yeah, I love that. So with me, it's the early stuff, those classic genres, and then in between too, I love platformers. I love all the classic platformers, and the side-scrolling shooters and stuff. So I like. I'm a big fan of pick up and play games where you don't have to, read a thick instruction manual or get lost, you don't know where you're going, or have to backtrack a lot. I prefer, and I'll play some of those and I have patience for some of those, but I find a lot of times I just don't have the patience for a game where if I'm 30 or 40 minutes into it, an hour into it, I've barely done anything or barely encountered any enemies or still looking for the first weapon or whatever. Those kind of bore me a little bit. I like action-oriented games where I'm, just my life is under threat. And I think it's because I grew up playing stuff like Robotron and Asteroids and games where you have to be on your toes immediately and you're immediately under threat, those kind of games. And that's just what I grew up playing. I love action-oriented titles. So yeah, that's the genre I like. A lot of them.
Yeah, I grew up playing a lot of Silent Hill, Resident Evil, so I'm just scared all the time.
That's awesome. I love
stuff's gonna jump out all the time.
Yeah, those are great. I love the first Resident Evil. The second one even better, and I love Resident Evil 4 is one of my favorite. After Ghost of Glory, that's one of my favorite. Modern games. With that great, and it's not a hack and slash, but it's got that great 3D feel, and it's got that great combat to it. I love it, if you can call it that. It's kind of a hard game to really nail down on one. I mean, it's survival horror, but it's more action oriented than most. Love it. That's a great game. That hits that sweet spot for me. Good puzzles, but not super confusing. I actually beat that game, which is nice. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I've played. I've played like 3 different versions of Resident Evil 4.
Because they remastered it, and everything.
VR, and then
right.
Yeah, that the remake has I don't know if it's out. I know we talked about it before, Thomas. I can't remember. I didn't check, but they have a new VR mode for the remake on the PSVR 2. I want to try that out because I never got to try that. I don't have an Oculus, so I never got to try that other one. But man, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I bet. I haven't done any of the VR games yet. Like I don't have any of it. I've just never tried them. I should.
I think they're fun. I found that mine for the PS5, I've only played it 3 times, and I think that's simply because where I have my stuff set up right behind me, I don't have a ton of space, and the 3 times that I did it, I couldn't play a couple games. I got stuff around me, so it makes you dedicate the space for like safety and protection, but you have to have the space that it orients. I'm like, dang, I have to go hook this up out in the living room or something to be able to do anything with it. And so it's just inconvenient, and I already don't have enough time to mess with stuff. But I want to dive into it more. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Sure. But I actually wanted to bring this up. The Oculus 3 just went up for pre-order yesterday. So that's been making the rounds on stuff. It looks pretty dang cool, and it based on some of the stuff that they put out, apparently it's already going to be more powerful than the PSVR 2, which just came out this year. So that's pretty interesting.
The technology just goes. I can't keep up with the new stuff. Just when I'm getting to enjoy a system, they come up with a new one, and mine's outmoded already. It's always been that way.
Yeah, no.
I've always been kind of a late adopter anyway.
Right.
Well, it's like a battle. It's like a battle between Google and Sony. So it's just like Google had one, Sony has one, so Google's pushing one out as soon as they possibly can.
Right. Yeah, I've typically been a late adopter throughout gaming because I'll wait for a price drop, or I'm still having fun with the old system, so I just stick with it or whatever. But there have been a couple of exceptions. Like I got a Wii pretty fast because my sister and brother-in-law got it, and I went over and played it, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is so cool. Went and got it right away. And I got Nintendo sent me a Switch because when I was still writing for the paper, so that was a very early adopt. But usually I'll wait for a price drop or something.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, when there's already,
I've already got a room full of games that I'm already playing.
Yeah, it's like, do you even need to?
Yeah.
Like,
hurry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel it. I wanted to ask you something. I want to hear your thoughts on the 2600 plus because I wanted to be writing an article about it here soon. So I'm curious to hear from other people.
Right now, I like the fact that it's bringing the 2600 into the spotlight, and that it's going to get some people playing it that maybe never have, or it's going to get kind of people interested in this era of gaming. Is obviously cool, and I'm all for it. I know there's some setbacks. From what I understand, it's not going to be an FGPA system, and that some games are incompatible with it. Apparently, a fairly large number of games are going to be incompatible with it, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, it doesn't seem, the price seems fair, I guess. If you're going to launch and distribute a console, you've got to, 129 doesn't sound unreasonable. So yeah, I'd be willing to try it out.
So do you plan on grabbing one?
I'll be a late adopter on it. I've got a 2600 with about 300 and something games, so I don't really feel, or maybe by now it might be 400. I don't even know. No, it's not that many. It's probably 250 to 300. I'm not one of these people that feels like they have to get everything. If I see one later that someone just wants to dump or something, maybe I'll grab it. But yeah, I won't grab one right away probably.
Okay. Do you have the Atari adult games?
I don't own those, no, but I've definitely played them. Like friends have them, or I play them at a convention, stuff like beat 'em and eat 'em, and stuff like that.
Custer's Revenge.
Yeah, just crazy.
Yeah, I find it hilarious that Atari's website listed that those were tested, and like some of those worked, but some of the Activision releases didn't work.
Yeah, that's weird.
Hey,
right.
Very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird. I saw somebody have this discussion the other day in one of the Facebook groups for Atari, and they were talking about, you know how they're doing those new releases, like those limited edition cart releases that Atari's doing.
Oh yeah, they're kind of expensive.
Yeah, they're $60. Yeah. They're $60. What's your thought on that?
Are those the ones they're just the original game re-released? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It comes with a little bit of stuff in the box or whatever. I'm gonna
probably just err on the side of buying the original stuff.
Yeah, it's
30 would be more tempting, 60 seems a little steep, but so many homebrew games are 60, so someone.
Yeah, that was kind of the point brought up, is that new releases from other people are around that price, and I've even seen if you get into the Jaguar and stuff,
mm-hmm.
Some of the homebrews that come out for those are $90,
yeah,
$80.
My son got me Rebooteroids, and he goes, "Dad, this was expensive," but he asked me what I wanted for Christmas. I honestly I didn't know. I figured it would be about $50 or so, and I think it might have been 80 or something. I felt bad, but I loved it, man. It was an amazing game. Someone wants me to.
I agree.
B wants me to talk about my dog.
Yeah,
this is my dog Daisy. She's 10 years old, and she's a sweetheart. And I think she might have a crush on me. She's great. Sweetheart.
People love the dogs on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's a big fan.
Wanting me to pick her up. So there you go.
Yeah, it's Lucas is in the chat saying that those are my favorite games. I think talking about the Atari adult games.
Oh yeah.
Hey, look, Custer's Revenge is kind of fun. It's not the worst game.
Oh, there's plenty worse games for the 2600 than those. They're in some cases they just mimic older, other games. Just with an adult theme. I think X-Man.
Yeah, it's more so the box than anything, right?
X-Man has a great cover. The 2600.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, very very interesting.
What some people don't realize in the early '80s, games like Galaga and even Space Invaders and stuff were considered kind of controversial. Like C. Everett Koop, the Surgeon General under Reagan, he came out with this big thing against video games, and he was citing games like Galaga as being too violent because you're just shooting stuff. And now that just seems so insanely ridiculous. And even stuff like, now parents are getting their kid, their little 8-year-old kids to play Mortal Kombat. Hey, this is what we had when we were, and it just seems cartoonish now to play Mortal Kombat on the Genesis with the blood code and everything. That just seems, like watching cartoons or something. And then now, ironically, with all the with all the parents groups and the government getting involved, that basically created an adult category of video games. And so they're railing against all these adult games and wanting restriction, a rating system, everything. That basically just created a category of adult video games. And that's why, you can have Grand Theft Auto and why you can have Resident Evil and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's wild, the evolution of that stuff, and I mean, like, every type of media went through that. Music is, a big thing there. Obviously, they got the labels,
Yeah.
parental advisory labels put on the CDs and cassettes, and yeah, every type of media went through that at some point. So,
and I really don't have a problem with labels. At least the stuff can still be published, and it's not illegal, or there's no burnings, or it's a much better. There's a lot. It's having a label on something. I don't really consider that censorship, because you still have the product. It sort of advises people that don't know anything about it roughly what you're getting into.
Right, they're rallying for that right now with books. That's a big thing going on right now. I was actually just reading something about it again this morning, but yeah, because like I don't know all the details, but basically like books in schools, and like they're rallying to do something.
Yeah,
like
I've been hearing, I know that with all the book bans and stuff, and which is funny because it's pretty ridiculous, because these books that are getting banned, so there'll be a book with literary quality that might have a scene or two that's a little edgy or a little grown up or a little, personal with body stuff or whatever. That's super incredibly tame to what 99% of the kids that are in schools are looking at on their own time with TikTok.
What they're seeing on TikTok, yeah.
Who knows at all?
Yeah. And, I mean, they can see it on their computers from school. Like my son, they're going to take books from, he can't read these certain books, but here's your Chromebook that you have in, TikTok and YouTube and the internet.
Right.
It has way worse.
Yeah. And it's, and I don't want to completely throw the parents under the bus, because parenting is a difficult job, and parents don't always know what to do, and they're confused with technology, they're confused with the way, the thing kids are into, or the Beach Boys and Beatles were considered satanic. I mean, the Beach Boys were considered not just PG or R or anything, satanic.
I blame Pet Sounds.
Yeah, for Pet Sounds. Yeah, I believe what Pet Sounds.
Yeah, all
one of my favorite albums.
Yeah, all that crazy experimental, such experimental sound. That's got to be from the devil.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
Yeah,
too good otherwise.
Yeah, I actually have.
Salute John B is one of the greatest songs of all time, and one of the funniest freaking songs ever. What a great album.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about music a little bit. It's a pretty good transition. So I actually have a book about the Beatles, and like it lists different songs and stuff for parents to be weary of, like songs that they can, you should let your kids listen to or allow them to listen to, and ones that you shouldn't. And it's really wild because like the songs on there are so tame.
When was this book published?
Oh, this is from I don't know, sometime in the 70s.
Probably a religious book, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Yeah, it's real interesting.
Unauthorized guy.
Right. It's really interesting to look at a lot of the propaganda and stuff from that time about, the warnings, and the satanic panic was a big thing in the 80s and everything. And my parents were always, I think my parents did a pretty good job of, they let us kind of figure things out ourselves and figure out what we like. And they were there for us, and we knew that they loved us, and they had rules and stuff, but they, if I brought home a Kiss album, it meant nothing. I didn't care. Yeah. They knew it was just some goofy guys playing bad rock music in their eyes. I loved it, but didn't faze them. If I watched, there was a big. I grew up. My parents took us to church when we were kids, and there was some big thing to take Three's Company off the air. That was a big petition. My parents thought that was ridiculous. We watched Three's Company. The only show my parents didn't want me watching was Silver Spoons with Ricky Schroeder, where he had the home arcade, because they thought that was like too snooty, too privileged, too, like I guess I was jealous or something. Yeah, it was pretty much whatever. But yeah, it's funny because, the stuff, the young people are always going to have stuff that confuses and confounds and scares the older generation. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like what each generation has tried to do, is like sort of push the limits.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw things just get progressively crazier and crazier with like kind of all genres
Yeah.
of music, really. I mean, if we're being real, like even pop music now, like you see stuff really pushing the boundaries. Like I can every genre I can name. Like there was even jazz that did
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's super interesting, and like every single time there's a sort of freak out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've been through this like 10 other times, and
Right.
just
Well, it seems like
history repeats
with
itself.
music, I mean, and just creativity with artistic projects, with music, with movies, with video games, it seems like there's only one way to go. You get more detailed, more edgy, more artistic, more genre blending, more shocking, more, it just doesn't stay stagnant. That's not really realistic, and that's not, people are not
Not
gonna,
interesting
yeah, and young people
to
are
the
gonna want
younger
something different than their
generation.
parents listen to, even though classic rock is so popular with kids. But anyway, that's kind of another story. But yeah, it's interesting to see how different mediums evolve. And in the old days, the early rock bands smiled and wore suits, and then the hair got a
Yeah,
little longer, and then they started wearing
you
t-shirts.
see
It was
how
a big deal when
Beatles.
they had it. It was shocking when Mick Jagger wore like a sweater on Ed McMahon, or on the Ed McMahon show, instead of a suit. That was very shocking. It was shocking to show Elvis's hips, and even though
Hips
he's
was a
fully
big deal.
dressed and everything. So yeah, but incrementally, Lenny Bruce was shocking at some point and got arrested for just cussing.
I love Lenny Bruce.
Yeah, and so it's interesting to see how it always evolves. It always gets outrageous. It always gets extreme, and we just live to tell about it. And that doesn't mean the end of the world typically. You know.
Yeah, it just kind of comes
Yeah.
back around every generation. It's like my kids think it's the first time it's ever happened, and it's kind of my job to tell them no, it's kind of happened before. And
Right.
but every time I say it, I'm listening and I hear my parents saying the same thing to me, because when
Yeah.
it happened to me, I'm like, no, this is new. This is only happened to me.
Right.
It's a circle. It all kind of
And
comes back around.
as a parent, you are kind of uncomfortable sometimes with what your kids want to watch or what they want to listen to. You're like, let's, kind of, and I've waited for certain films for my son, loves movies. And there were certain ones that he really wanted to watch when he was very young. And there were probably a few when he was 10 watching Terminator 2. It kind of scared him a little bit. And that was when I introduced him that movie. I think that was it. And yeah, and maybe you could argue that was a little young, but to me, it felt, he was, and he loved it, and he turned out great. He's a school teacher, he watched some probably semi-edgy stuff earlier than a lot of kids, but very smart kid, very much into films. Now he's 5 years into being a history teacher at a middle school, and you could not ask for a more moral, upstanding, he's already getting accolades at school and stuff as a teacher, and he's very intelligent, and he's got a ridiculous amount of pop culture knowledge, because
That's awesome.
we raised him right.
Bill's character. Bill's character.
Yeah.
That's why I was always told. Yeah, no, I mean it's obviously that's the decision of like each parent, and I think Terminator 2 is pretty tame.
Yeah, and my best friend growing up, his parents were incredibly strict about what he did. And as a matter of fact, he had some of my Freak Brothers comics, and they burned them. And they were super,
Dang.
super, super religious, holy rollers, went to these charismatic churches and stuff, and would answer the phone, Jesus Lord, and all this stuff. And were just, they rebelled. I mean, my friend was one of the wildest, craziest, most rebellious people growing up through high school, would run away from home, would defy, his parents would say, you can't go to this concert. Well, he would ride in the back of my trunk to the concert that my parents would say, have fun. Little did they know my best friend was in the trunk of my car going to the concert. So, anyway, you can't, if you're super strict, you're gonna have problems. If you're too lenient, you might have problems. If you're somewhere in the middle, you still might have problems. A lot of times it's just circumstantial or influence of friends, or they're wired wrong. Some kids get into stuff just because they're geared that way. I don't know. Parenting's sort of an art more than a science,
Yeah, I would say that. I don't, it's difficult.
Yeah.
you gotta use good judgment, and
but trying to keep them from everything, and trying to keep them from reading like just
unrealistic.
some book that's a little edgy. I mean, having kids, you know, as they grow up, explore the world and stuff, and learn maybe things that you're slightly uncomfortable with. I mean, it's not all bad. I mean, it's part of the becoming, you know, growing up and sort of learning that life isn't, you know, just all great, you know, and
Yeah,
figuring things out.
yeah. No, I, yeah, I think that's the way to go. Like having some real world stuff in there, just nothing
And
crazy.
typically, if you're there for them and they know you love them, and you know, you'll listen to them and you're supportive, they're typically going to be okay, unless there's some really ingrained, you know, things that are almost wired that you can't really do much about, other than, you know,
Sure.
get medical help or something, or some kind of psychological help or something. Usually, if you're there for your kids and they know you love them, they're usually going to be pretty good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Would you have any input on any of that, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to take the advice of like those parent councils and stuff like that, because
Right.
to be honest, back in the day,
What a joke.
before the internet, that's kind of how I got my information. Is like they would kind of complain about stuff, and then like news outlets like MTV or like Regis and Kelly or somebody, or Regis and Kathy at the time, would talk about it, and I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I mean, I played a lot of Nintendo. I watched Andrew Dice Clay. I haven't
Mhm.
been to prison, and I'm alive. So
Yeah, sometimes the stuff that gets rebelled against is how kids find out. Oh, that must be cool if they're
that's
banning
100%.
it, or yeah, absolutely, that still happens.
Yeah. Yep. No, I was like that for sure. There's no doubt about that. Anything that you weren't supposed to do
Yeah,
or listen to as a kid or
right.
as a teenager, especially, is what I
Yeah.
did. So it's just
Being
how it
Well,
exposed to like married children,
right.
Oh man, that's
At the same time,
hilarious.
though, it's fun to like. I remember sometimes it's fun to get back to stuff that's sort of innocent and more wholesome, because you get kind of burnt out sometimes. I remember I was playing
Yeah.
Ninja Gaiden on the Wii U, and
Razor's Edge.
yeah, just a lot of cussing and stuff. And then I watched the Wolf of Wall Street, and they were snorting cocaine out of a girl's ass, and I'm like, you know, this is all interesting, but I
Yeah.
think I'm ready to just go, you know, play some, you know, Mr. Do or Pac-Man or something, you know, because there's
Yeah.
only so much of that stuff. Some of that gets a little old after a while, and you just want to cleanse your palate and do something that's like, you know, just watch the original Star Trek series or something.
My palate cleanser is always Andy Griffith.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Great show.
Yeah. I love Andy
Holds
Griffith's
up.
show. So that's a palate. Yeah. Yeah, it's a palate cleanser for me
Yeah, good one.
all the time. So I don't want to, hold you super long. Is there anything that you want to promote here that you've got coming up, or that you're doing, or places you're going to be?
Let's see. I'll be at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in the middle of October, and I will be working at the Heritage Auctions booth. I won't be selling books, but if you want to bring your books to me to get signed, this does happen at shows a lot. If they know I'm going to be there in advance, they'll bring books for me to sign. I'll be happy to do that. People bring me games and consoles and things like that to sign too, which is kind of funny if they see me talk about it on my channel or whatever, or they just want a console signed by a bunch of different content creators or whatever. So I'm always good to talk retro gaming. Just come to the booth, talk. I'll be at Torg in November. That's exciting. Can't wait for that in Columbus, Ohio. I am at the very early stages of working on a sequel to the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 88 to 98. It's going to cover 99 to 2009, which will be interesting with Wii Sports and God of War and Maximo. Some really interesting stuff is going to be in that book. I've got YouTube. If you check me out on YouTube, just go to Brett Weiss on YouTube. Subs are always appreciated. Doesn't cost you a thing, so check that out as well. I've got some Adam Koralik, the popular YouTuber. Great dude. He was just in town, and he hung out over my house a couple of weekends ago. We spent 3 days together going around Dallas, Fort Worth, filming locations and stuff. So while
That's
he was
awesome.
here, not only has he got his travel channel coming up, doing a Dallas Fort Worth episode, I've recorded some videos with him in my game room, and you can watch my recent one. We talked about, if you've watched his channel, you probably know he's a big fan of Sega. Well, I did a video recently talking about, why are you such a big Sega fan? How did that happen? And that's what I like to talk about. I like to talk about people's past with gaming, growing up gaming, what got them into a certain console or genre or character or whatever. So we talked about his history with Sega, and that's on there. That's one of my most recent videos, so you can check that out. We've got a couple more coming out where we talk about his favorite Dreamcast games and his favorite Genesis games. So those will be fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, that man is everywhere all the time.
Insane, man. He's gonna break a world record for traveling. He's just always in another exotic location or in another city or something. It's crazy. He just travels constantly, and it's cool because I get to see him at conventions.
Yeah.
And so I know if he doesn't come here, I'll go there, or I'll see him in Chicago or at Portland or wherever, because he's always all over the place. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, big fan of Adam. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he really is, man. He's a lot of fun to hang out with, and he's a good dude.
Yeah, he definitely is. So we'll be seeing you at Torg then soon.
Looking forward to
it's
it.
coming up real soon.
I will have my book at Torg. I will have the full setup at Torg.
Sweet. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that watch the channel that'll be at Torg, and then some people here in the chat. So
good stuff.
Definitely check out Brett's books. I'll drop your website as well in the chat and then in the description. And we appreciate having you on, man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you just go to brettweisswords.com, you can go to the Square site from there, and I'll be happy to personalize a book and send it to you and all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Sure. Yeah, we'll have to do something again soon. We'll be seeing you soon. We see you quite a bit, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll have to talk more rock and roll next time.
Absolutely. Sounds like a good time. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back again next Sunday with another episode.
It's been fun, man.
Everybody have a great night.
Yeah.
Thank you.